like right now, good afternoon. Welcome to the live stream.
Hello.
Not that I've been accused of talking too much.
Did I jump in there a bit quick? Did it feel like it was?
Yeah, you'd be right. Welcome to this, I think this is our 5th live stream, and today we're going to be talking about health. But one of the things that we just want to do a double check, and if you just joined us, that's great. Can you just send us a message to make sure that the sound sounds okay? Because one of the things, what we've been doing, and this is key in a way. So you're in business, we're in business, and if you're not, then you know about it. But the standard, as you know, was originally set up to communicate to Christian business owners. It's a Christian business ministry, a Christian ministry for business owners, and it's about the journey that we have with God and with what we do in terms of our daily work, and the relevance of live streaming, and it's really very, I think, massively significant, is that for about 10 years, more than 10 years, I've been researching and reviewing what works and what doesn't work, listening to all the snake oil salespeople, listening and watching everything that people have got to say, and step by step it seems to have converged on this thing called live streaming. Of course, with so many people, you watch live streaming churches, you watch live streaming from people holding up their phone and doing a live stream, I don't know, in the zoo. I mean, you can do it anywhere. But when it comes to business, the really, really important aspect of this is new business. Everybody hates cold calling. Nobody succeeds at it. And so there has to be a method or a way of businesses being able to communicate with a very, very large audience, even though only a small fraction of them would be looking to buy any given product or a product at any given time. And that's where live streaming comes into it. Loads of stuff on our website about it, on not the standard, but salesexchange.co.uk. There are links on the standard website as well. But that was the point. The whole thing about the sound and getting it right, and I'm looking at a different screen over here and got different levels popping up and down, and it just clips into the red, which is fine. And I hope that that everything is working. And let me just check something because it's really important. Yes, our mic levels are on. So, to all intents and purposes, this should be fine. So, health. Segue over to Liz.
Well, we've been on quite a journey as far as health is concerned. Nigel probably more so than me. But up until I had my children, I'd kind of struggled with my weight, but I'd always been relatively fit. I used to swim and so on, and then sort of afterwards I've played badminton and been to the gym and so on, and used to swim quite a lot about 20 years ago.
Can you carry on talking? I just need to make an adjustment.
Yeah, and so I've been on quite a journey, and I think the older you get, the more difficult it is to stay healthy and to stay slim and fit into your clothes. And so we've been on a journey, which has probably more or less coincided with our faith journey as well. You know, the two have gone side by side to quite a certain extent. But Nigel's journey of health has been a far more interesting one than mine. You know, I'm grateful and thankful to God that I am actually pretty healthy, apart from the odd migraine occasionally and so on. But I think it's important to look at one's health because, you know, the Bible says in Corinthians that the body is a temple for the Holy Spirit. In 1 Corinthians, I've written it down, 6:19, it says that our body is a temple for the Holy Spirit. and it also says that it was bought with a price. And so if we neglect our health and we neglect our bodies and do things that we know are harmful to us, there's one thing having an occasional, well, I say lapse, but having a biscuit or whatever. But I think if you accept that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, then you need to really take care of your body and understand that that's, God gave us this flesh, but he didn't give it us to abuse it and do whatever we could with it. And so that resonated with me this week, because I've been reading Corinthians, and I think that's an important thing to bear in mind as we talk through this episode, this live stream about health, and what it's meant to us and what it means really in terms of our health going forward. But Nigel's had more health issues than I have. And has approached them in a different... No, but
that makes me sound like a hypochondriac.
Not at all. He's not a hypochondriac, OK? He doesn't get man flu. But no, I think his journey is far more significant than mine in terms of what we've been doing in the last couple of 3 years.
I think, I said at the beginning about work and business and so on, and I've been working for myself and running my own show since 1987. So I was 26, I think. I can't remember. Yeah, something like that. And did all the things that someone that had been involved in sales and so on would do. Which, you go out with the lads, you go drinking and eating and curries and this and that and the other. And you look at your weight of one is a certain weight and so on. And you think, well, fine, so what? And life throws lots of different curveballs at you. And so by the time, I was married, had 2 children, and I was 34. So that was 1996. I remember that. That's a definite date. So I was 34 in November 1996, and I had a quadruple bypass. And the doctors were quite surprised because I was only 34, and it's like, wow. I mean, trust me, I thought, wow, as well. And I thought, old people are supposed to be getting this, not me. I'm only 34. And I kind of in and out of kind of waist 34, 36 jeans, trousers. And I ate what I ate and I drank what I drank. And the doctor basically said, you've got a problem, you've got to have it done. And I said, well, this was November. And I said, well, I tell you what, why don't we, so what, kind of January, February time next year? He said, no, tomorrow. I said, you're talking about tomorrow? I said, well, wait a second. I said, can it be done on Monday? Why would you want it done on Monday? I said, wife, 2 children, a company, staff. I've got to kind of get things in order. He said, well, Mr. Main, he said, I can't actually guarantee that you'll be here tomorrow. So we need to get this planned straight away. Fair enough. Have it your own way. And straight after that, went to all the rehab stuff that all the oldies go to, and they look at me and I look at them and they go, what are you here for? I said, I had a quadruple bypass. No. And that's how it had always been. And at the time, I was taught low fat, eat low fat. Don't eat too much sweet stuff. But carbs are okay. Keep eating what you're doing. Do what we're telling you to do, which is low fat, carbs, pasta, rice, all that kind of stuff. And I did what they told me to do. Fast forward 10 years. And I'm not feeling so good. So I see this other doctor, and the doctor says to me, you're okay, but don't drink. I was glass of red wine. I would go and see my doctor at the time, and he'd go, you're looking trim, Mr. Main. And I'm thinking, that's funny, because I feel like a fat individual. I've got a picture in a minute, and you'll see why. And so, but he would say, alcohol? I'll have a glass or so, a couple of glasses a night. Oh, that's good. That's good for you. Oh, well done. So, fast forward to this new doctor. This is at Watford General Hospital. And he took a look at me and went, OK, well, you're OK. There's nothing wrong with you per se, but don't drink, not even a sherry at Christmas, and the outcome will be pretty good.
Lose 20 kilos.
Oh, I forgot that. He also said lose 20 kilos. I said, OK, I can do that. I can lose the weight and not drink. But why? I said, I had this done 10 years ago. Why hasn't nobody had told me any different? Not the doctors, not the nutritionists, not the rehab people, absolutely nobody. Not even the consultant. So what, is there some kind of expectation? You just know it? You're just going to work it out? It's just going to be laid on you straight away that you know what to eat and drink and what you should or shouldn't do, when there is a force, almost a force around us that is saying, drink this and eat that and do that and live this way. Fast food, restaurants, adverts, everything. It's being pushed on us to eat and live in a certain way. So we go, OK, fine. So I stopped drinking and I lost a load of weight. I was running every day, sometimes twice a day. I was doing weights and I was really, really working at it. And I lost a load of weight. And I got down to like 69 kilos from 90.
You need to show the picture.
OK, I'll show you this picture. There we go. I must move out of the way. So you can see I was kind of chubby round there, you could say.
You were 42 then?
I was 42 then, yeah. I'm 58 now. So you can see, that's the plane, let's go back to this one. So you can see, I've lived it, I've walked it, I walked the walk. I was the larger person in the group. Always a good laugh, up for a beer. And that didn't really change. And it didn't change until about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
About 3 years ago, I kind of kept off the drink. I'd have a beer, and I mean, my drinking habits, I suppose over the lockdowns, almost non-existent. But I don't go into it. And there's a real big reason. Right? We'll come on to it as well. This is all part and parcel of this. So, I stopped drinking, and we came all the way up to this point. And what I will stress is that I don't like running. I don't like doing exercise. I mean, my brother, he's like that. I mean, he's skinny as a rake. He's a little bit older than me. He's 60 this year, lives in Chamonix in the Alps, and is climbing, walking, skiing, riding, running, canoeing, anything, you name it. Always outdoors, always outside, not an ounce of fat on him. Me, on the other hand, I'm not into, like many people, I don't want to go. I'm not into that. It doesn't do anything for me. And so I spent much of my life wondering why people got fat. And then you pick all these things up. No amount of exercise is going to help you lose weight. It's all about diet. You go, yeah, right. Never really succeeded at it. So I don't believe that, and it's just nonsense, and they just want you to buy this or buy that or go on protein shakes or whatever, that kind of thing. So we then got to about 3 years ago, and we started watching this, looking at stuff on Netflix and on YouTube and so on. And we also did the Tim Ferriss thing about, eating loads of protein, but loads of pulses and beans and...
Oh yeah, vegan, I think it was called.
Well, we did the vegan bit.
Put weight on.
Did the vegan bit, did lots of protein, ate in a certain way during the week and had one day blowout and eat as much as you possibly could and drink and pizzas and everything, and then watch your weight drop back down the following week. That didn't work either. We did try. So we did try.
We were quite good at it, weren't we?
Yeah, but we were, we were going, "Well, just keep putting on weight. This is nonsense. We're not even eating any protein. It's just," and so what happened was an education. And we watched. Some of you may have heard of him. There's a guy called Dr. Berg, Berg. Look him up on YouTube. Wow. And this, watching the videos became a massive revelation, because he explained what the food did and what these different terminologies and descriptions that were dished out to the general public, what they actually meant. And you think, okay, so where's the big revelation? Well, it's kind of just white processed sugar and flour. It boils down to that. There's nothing else, is there, apart from, the oils and stuff like that. But it really boils down to those two things. It's like, wow, is that it? Yeah, pretty much. You see people that have got beer guts, and you go, "Oh, fancy a beer?" And they go, "Well, I don't drink." And you think, well, why has he got beer gut? It's not beer, it's a sugar gut. A beer gut's a sugar gut. I know people that don't drink, and they've got guts on them because of the amount of sugar they take on board.
I mean, we did do an exercise a long time ago, and I think when we were about 2003, 2004, and we looked at how much sugar was in the drinks that the children were having. I mean, I've always, well, I say always, I gave up caffeine about 20 odd years ago because I was drinking a lot of coffee. And so I gave up caffeine, and I don't drink it now. I get terrible shakes. I'm completely averse to caffeine. But that was a personal choice. And so, but I used to drink a lot of Coca-Cola. I never bought it, I never had it in the house, but whenever I used to go out, I would drink maybe 6 or 7 bottles of Coke. I'd go out with a friend, and she'd drink Budweiser, and I'd drink Coca-Cola. And I'd get home at like 3 o'clock in the morning, absolutely buzzing, like you wouldn't believe. I couldn't work out what it must have been, that cup of tea I had when I went to her house, not thinking it was the 6 or 7 bottles of Coke. And when I gave up caffeine, and I've only worked this out probably in the last 6 months or so, when I stopped drinking caffeine, I actually stopped drinking Coca-Cola. And I had huge withdrawal symptoms. I mean, just the worst headaches. I remember sitting on a train going from Waterloo to Walton-on-Thames. I'd been to an appointment, and it was about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I remember having to sit on the edge of my seat because I didn't want to fall asleep, because I felt so wretched because I had such a bad headache. And it's only, I've worked out now that it was probably the quantity of sugar that I was, because I wasn't overweight at the time at all, probably more living on my adrenaline. I was doing a lot of swimming at the time. But I realise now that actually it was probably as much to do with the sugar in the Coca-Cola, because I didn't have sugar in coffee or tea, than it was the actual caffeine withdrawal. Yeah. And so, but we did do an exercise with the children, and we got like Ribena and Coca-Cola and whatever. And we realised how much sugar there was at the time. This was probably about 2003, 2004. We realised how much sugar was in sugary drinks. The drinks that you give to your children, squash and Ribena and whatever.
Cans of Coke and so on.
Yeah. And we didn't buy it a lot, but it was available to them because that's what they wanted to drink. I was like, we've got to stop that, so we'll just get them like sugar-free stuff. Well, of course, that's full of chemicals. So the best thing is don't drink it at all. But of course, that's difficult when you've got children, and we appreciate that. But so we'd looked at sugar, but it was only more recently, after looking at Dr. Berg, that we realised about what sugar was. But so we won't get ahead.
We showed the kids 1 can of Coke, 8 teaspoons of sugar in a can of Coke. And they looked at that and went, wow. So 8 teaspoons of sugar in a can of Coke. So you go, right, okay. So, but we didn't make a quantum change right then. We didn't change it.
No, not
because
at all.
it's a process of, almost like a process of discovery. You've got to find out and work out and understand and do all of this. And so as we kind of moved along, so this guy Dr. Berg talks about keto and the explanation of what keto is and what the effect is on your body of what you're eating, whatever you're eating, doesn't matter what it is. But for me, the really important part was, what did the food do to my... And if you're of an age, similar age to me, you know about cholesterol, you know about statins, you know about HDL, LDL, triglycerides. And so you know about these things that affect your cholesterol, and based upon your cholesterol, your doctors dish out statins. There's a guy called Sam Malhotra. He's not a guy, he's a doctor. He is a massive proponent of people not taking statins. So they're a complete waste. They do not do anything. There is basically is a con, big con. I'm reading this thinking, but I've been on statins for 20 years. I mean, literally, plus 20 years. So I'm reading and I'm listening, and each time I'd go, they go, oh, you've got to watch your cholesterol, Mr. Main. The bad cholesterol, as high as a tusk. Your borderline type 2 diabetes, tusk. What's your diet like? Okay, what are you talking about? I don't take sugar. I don't eat processed food. Well, we've got to keep an eye on this. So I carry on watching the documentation, the documentaries, and the videos and so on. I go, do you know what? I'm stopping my statins. I'm not taking these anymore. This is nonsense. I was on 80 milligrams, so it's like the top prescribed statin, and then after that, it's like one doctor said, if your cholesterol doesn't come down, we'll send you to the Royal Free to a lipid specialist, and that'll cost thousands. But you look so good. We'll pay for that. We'll make that happen. So kind. So what I learned, is that the bad cholesterol, the nasty stuff they get, is made up of two types of cholesterol. Large buoyant and small dense. Sugar and the carbs and everything else, they create small dense. And small dense cholesterol, LDL, within your cholesterol, acts like a rasping effect in your arteries. So as it's going through at certain critical points within your arteries, okay, it's a rasping effect, and damages the internal walls of your arteries, causes them to clog.
Yeah, that's the sugar as well, isn't it? That's what's caused by sugar.
Yeah, so you eat lots of sugar, lots of beers and alcohol and everything else, puts that into your bloodstream, and it rasps the inside of your arteries. So when they show you these nonsense pictures of here's all the fatty cholesterol, and you need to take statins to keep it down. Rubbish. It's absolute rubbish. Because if you have a keloid issue with your skin, if you cut your skin and it grows back and it heals, you get a keloid, you get a kind of a lump on the scar. That's the same thing that's happening inside your arteries. So when you see these animation graphics of some little machine going through your arteries, spinning around and cleaning it all up, it's the equivalent of getting a knife and cutting off the skin on your scar, expecting it to heal back properly. It's just absolute and utter nonsense. So the only way you can do this, and the only way to understand this, is to obviously change your diet. Because the other side, the large buoyant LDL, is the good stuff. It means you've got a great diet. And the indicator for that is the number of your triglycerides. I think it's high triglycerides means, or low triglycerides, I'll put a link in the information, but basically your triglycerides, if you've got high triglycerides, was it low?
I can't remember.
It means you've got high, large buoyant LDL, which is good, which is fine.
But if you've got a high HDL, that also is the same. Because normally high HDL, and I think it's high triglycerides, kind of counteract the LDL. Because I had a cholesterol test about 4 years ago, turned 50, and then I thought, I can get this for free now, because otherwise you have to pay for it. So I went along, and then I got a letter from the doctor saying you need to contact us because we're concerned about your level of cholesterol. And they sent me a little booklet that says if you are over 50, overweight, don't do any exercise, have a high-fat diet, all of this kind of stuff. And so I rang the doctor and, you're at risk of type 2 diabetes and all of this. And I rang the doctor and I said, I'm a bit concerned because you've sent me this letter and said that my cholesterol's high. I said, but I don't fit the profile of any of this information that you've sent me. I'm not overweight, I exercise regularly, I have a healthy diet and all that. And he was like, oh yeah, but actually, he said, it's what you've got there. He says, you've got really high HDL, which it counteracts the LDL. So actually, it's not like a proper reading. We're not giving you accurate indication.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, but I think what had happened was we had, we'd looked at Dr. Berg and Nigel was interested in the statins thing, and we'd watched stuff that we were like, wow, the statins thing was just mind-boggling. It was the first $1 trillion drug in the States.
In the world.
Dish it out like sweeties, and but it doesn't do any good. But it also, you run the risk of having type 2 diabetes if you take it for long term.
But they also they're still pushing for this, to put statins in standard food for kids. I mean, that's just insanity. Because kind of bring the statin thing up to a conclusion. So I had a blood test recently. Get a phone call from the doctor afterwards to say, well, I just want to talk to you about your blood and about your cholesterol. And it's, your LDL is very high. And I went, yeah. What's the triglyceride and the HDL? Right, there's nothing wrong with me. It's fine. But Mr. Main, I said, listen, you don't do a split LDL test. You don't tell me ever, and you've never told me, not in 25, 30 years, what my small dense and large buoyant LDL is. And I know the fact that I've got, and my triglycerides of what? She went, well, actually, they're very, very high. You must be doing something in your diet. They're very high. I said, the reason they're very high is because my LDL is high because of the large buoyant LDLs that's in there, not the small dense. She went, sorry, Mr. May, what was that? Large? What was that description? The large, and what was the other one?
You could hear the pen scratching, couldn't you?
It's like, I'm telling you, my doctor, about LDL, and you don't know. He said, well, are you taking your statins? I said, absolutely not. Oh, but you're on 80 milligrams. I said, yeah, I've stopped taking them. And you've heard of all of it, all the reasons why. He said, well, maybe we could lower your statins, but give you 40 milligrams. I said, no. What about 10? It's like, oh, give me a break. It's like someone trying to do a sympathy close because I'm been in business and sold for all my life. It's a sympathy close. Oh, please take some statins. It's part of my target. I won't hit my target if you don't take statins. Get stuffed. I mean, I was furious.
Poor doctor had an education though, didn't he?
But the point is that pharmaceuticals, pharmacology, pharma. In the Bible, it relates to pharma in the Greek as being witchcraft. Oh dear. Oh, there's a turn up for the books. You look at the sword, and it's got the twin snakes around the sword to denote what the medical profession is. They're licensed, genuinely licensed, qualified and approved drug pushers that do the work on behalf of the pharmaceutical industry. We are no good to the pharmaceutical industry if we're healthy. End of story. Absolutely end of story. And all of this starts lending itself, we're looking at this thinking, wait a second, we're going back to joining dots here. If this is what we're doing over here in terms of our health, how on earth did they get on with their health back in the 1st century? And so we start talking about it and you go, well, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. Well, Luke's Dr. Luke. What does he say? What did he do? He didn't say, well, you're not looking so good, go to the chemist. And the thing is that when you start reading the Bible and looking at this, it's like, it says in the Bible, not if, when you fast. So of course we're looking at this when you fast, it's not if, and the Bible's very specific. The words that are used are very particular. They're not just thrown in there. And you look at the later version, the later versions. You look at the earliest version. You get your hands on it. You read it and go, if, no, when you fast. Why? That led us on to listening to this guy, Dr. Berg, talking about intermittent fasting. So we look at fasting, look at intermittent fasting. Why would it do that? Why would anybody want to do that? I had it drummed into me from a child. Oh, your breakfast, most important meal of the day. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So we start looking at all of this and go, well, how do we start pulling this apart? We'll just go and do it. It's not going to kill you, is it? We said to ourselves. So we'll do a fast. So what? Difficult. Try doing biblical fasting in the first place, and all the pressures come in. Or would you like the smell of that coffee? Or wouldn't you like some chocolate with that? And so on. So it's like, so the fasting bit was problematic in the early days. So then we're looking at intermittent fasting and why you would ever want to do it. So it comes back to your body and what your body does and what it burns up. And of course, what it doesn't burn up, it stores as converts sugar into fat. So you get fat because you can't burn it all up. You can't overfill a car. But that's no good to anybody, saying that to anybody. You go, become a gym bunny and keep running every day and do weights every day and do 2-hour workout every day. And people look at you and go, but I don't want to do that. And so there's an element of self-control. And the self-control is, you've got to learn it first. You've got to understand what they're talking about first, instead of just blindly following what someone says. You won't stick to it. So we understood about intermittent fasting, meaning that if once your body burns up the food that it's got, it then goes into something called ketosis, which means it starts burning up the fat. That's it. Simple as that. Eat the food. When it's been burnt up, it then moves on to the fat and uses your fat as energy. Happy days. That's it. That's the simple lesson. So don't eat too much. Don't 3 square meals a day. We're not sailors. We don't need square meals. But you don't need breakfast. You don't need lunch. But you do need to eat at a certain time. And there are different ways of doing this. And it's called intermittent fasting. You can do 16 hours of not eating, which is no big deal to anybody, and eat whatever you want really to eat within 8 hours or 4 hours. It's up to you. You get used to it.
I think it's a bit of trial and error. I mean, when we first started it, because I don't tolerate milk so well, but when we first did it, when we first started keto, which we touched on before, if you look up keto, it's high fat, low carb, which is really counterintuitive, I think. A lot of people have been educated to go high carb, low fat. And especially, our generation particularly.
Slow release.
Yeah, slow release carbohydrates. You've got to have your porridge in the morning, brown bread and so on and so on. Your cereals and that kind of thing. But in actual fact, the way to do it and the way to be satisfied, to have your hunger satisfied, is to have more fat rather than less fat. And so through a process of trial and error, we cut out pasta. And some people go, I can't throw their hands up and say, I can't cut out pasta. But I can't actually remember the last time we had pasta.
It's just what we understood about white. If it's white process,
yeah, and the thing,
white bread and pasta and
so we cut out pasta croissants. And we cut out bread, yeah.
Brioche buns.
Hot cross buns.
Hot cross buns.
But we cut out those things and rice and so on. But then what we replaced it with was
naan bread.
No, sure. What we replaced it with was like cream, double cream, cream cheese, hard cheese, like any kind of cheese really, high fat meat, so not necessarily lean meat, but things like pork and mince and lamb,
good marbled steak,
bacon and things like that.
Proper mince,
But it goes, we cut out potatoes, and because they're very starchy, and if you don't burn them up, they turn to sugar and then eventually turn to fat. So we cut out a lot of things, and a lot of desserts. We do have desserts occasionally, but not every day.
I couldn't give up the chocolate, so dark chocolate. I eat dark chocolate.
But we cut this out. But through a process of trial and error, we cut out the high carb stuff, and then we combined that with intermittent fasting. So a typical day, we get up and we have coffee and so on, and then we don't eat really until mid-afternoon.
2, 3.
Yeah, something like that. But we do have, which is what we had when we first came online, was a hot chocolate, but not made with Cadbury's hot chocolate, made with dark chocolate, so made with cocoa, coconut milk, the coconut milk that you get in tins.
So use a carton and about 100 and something grams of the coconut, so that's solid coconut you get in the tin.
And so we have that, and it's cocoa, and we don't have anything else. We don't have sugar in it or anything like that.
Because there's already natural sugar in the coconut.
And so we have that around lunchtime.
Sometimes I have a big, like a tablespoon.
Dollop of cream.
More, if I can.
Dollop of cream.
Of double cream in it. It's lovely. But the point is that it's got a high fat content.
And so, and then we don't eat until later on.
Well, if you've joined us back, if you've joined us again, then good for you. What can I say? Nothing to do with us. Couldn't do anything. Wasn't doing anything at our end. We just have to just see what happens with this. Hopefully, we can rescue the data and be able to put it up on catch up.
It says mute over there, doesn't it?
Well, we've got sound going through there. No, it's not. That should be fine.
Okay, is it? Okay.
If anyone's managed to join back with us, just say hello. But this is
cream is satisfying. That's where we were at. We were talking about how having a high-fat diet is far more satisfying in the long run, and it means that you can more successfully do the intermittent fasting. And I think it really works, because the easiest meal of the day to cut out is breakfast, because going a whole, we eat about 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, so you're asleep for a good 8 hours of that, and you're not. But so I think if you can do that, a 16-hour, it sounds like a long time, but in reality, it's not, and it means you can stabilise your weight. Your weight can stay more constant, because you overcome that feeling of being hungry.
It just takes a little while, but it makes sense.
You adapt.
It makes sense that if you keep eating, you're never going to give your body a chance to burn up what you've eaten,
for your body to recover,
to burn up that fuel, and I think that's what I've always been looking for, is the ability to live how I want to live, but without getting fat, and that's what it was, and so if you think. In first century Israel, did they eat 3 meals a day? I don't think so. The 3 square meals didn't come in until the past few hundred years. And of course, we're looking at we were talking about fasting. We're talking about in the Bible. It says when you fast. So that journey led us to watch a documentary about fasting, and this was really interesting in that all biblical connotations and associations aside, what they found out was that when you fast, or when people were fasting over a certain period of time, your cells rejuvenate. Your cells repair themselves. So we're watching this thinking, well, that's really interesting. Because if we then go back to first century Israel and the time of Jesus, the Bible, and we've got when you fast, and if the world had the amount of problems, health problems then as we got now, there wouldn't be 7 billion people on the planet, on the earth, sorry, slip of the tongue, on the earth. So there must have been a way of keeping one's self as healthy as possible. Otherwise we would have all died out from disease. But that wasn't God's plan. So here we've got this book called the Bible that says when you fast. So we're kind of thinking, wait a second, this is interesting. So by fasting and intermittent fasting, your cells repair themselves and you stay healthy. Oh, I like the sound of that. So then it was a film on Netflix, which for some reason has been taken down. But there's lots of videos on YouTube about fasting. But this particular one, there were 2 sanatoriums. There was one in Russia and one in Switzerland. And the one in Russia was this beautiful location, bare as you like, looked like, stalagating but basically it was, you went there, the doctors would recommend and refer people there to drink water. No food.
And pay for the privilege.
Pay for the privilege, and just to be in an environment where you couldn't even get any food if you tried. But to get you to fast, to starve you for a week or thereabouts. And you think, this is nuts.
In controlled conditions, I mean that.
These people going in with some very serious ailments.
Chronic disease.
And chronic diseases and skin and body, and jaw dropped. The change in the people. So we had one end of the scale, which was Russia, and the other end of the scale, which was, I think, probably overlooking Lake Geneva or something like that. Probably cost a fortune to go there, doing exactly the same thing. But at least they can say, I went to a special place in Switzerland, to get healthy, and they come back wonderful. And then different doctors, they interviewed different doctors around the world, and they're recommending the same thing to these people that were never able to change, never able to move forward. Children were bouncing off the walls and the ceiling and wouldn't behave, yada, yada, yada. And they go, well, change the diet, change the way they eat, change how and how much and how frequently they eat, and see what happens. Wow, just wow. So from a biblical perspective, we're saying, well, it says when you fast. We're not asking God to draw us a picture or send us a text. Do what it says. When you fast. But how does it work? How does it fit in with everything? But if you then look at the forces that are out there, pharmaceutical and food and government and medical, we're no good to anybody if we're all healthy. So the food industry says keep eating the rubbish. If you keep eating the rubbish, it means we keep our mates in the pharmaceutical industry in jobs, with money being flowing to them, because the people that eat the bad food, they pay the taxes to the government. The government then pays massive amounts of money to the pharmaceutical industry in order that we can get free healthcare and free drugs, which doesn't make us better anyway. But we keep eating the food because the doctors tell us to eat bad food, which means we keep demanding the drugs, which means we pay our taxes to get the free drugs because we eat the food. You can see the cycle. It's messed up. It's absolutely messed up. So it's taking a step back and going, well, wait a second. If you or people that you know have anything chronic, have had long-term illnesses, even short-term, even people that say or feel they're overweight. You go, wait a second, The reason that is, in many, many, many cases, is because of the pressure of messaging that comes from the government, through doctors and food and big pharma and all the other.
But I also think to the health industry as well, because something just came into my mind. The health industry. I follow somebody on LinkedIn. I think he's quite local actually to us. He's a coach, an actual health, fitness, personal trainer type coach, and he said one of the biggest myths in the fitness industry is that if you don't eat, regularly, if you don't eat like 3, 4, 5 times a day, your body goes into starvation mode. And so you have to eat more to lose weight. He said that is the biggest lie, because it's just not true. I mean, if you even think about it, but this is like the cognitive dissonance things. We're told if you don't eat, then you will get fat. So you have to eat more to stop yourself getting fat. I mean, Nigel was in hospital back in 2019, hadn't been feeling it. We'd been on holiday with some friends of ours, and but I think it was a combination of the heat. I mean, it was unbelievable heat, dehydration, a bit of sunstroke, whatever it was, and Nigel wasn't well, and we went to the hospital when we got back, and he was in hospital from the Friday to the Tuesday. I think he was released, and. And the amount of
kilo, wasn't it?
A kilo of sugar in 5 days.
I could have eaten a kilo of sugar
with the toast, the marmalade or jam, the biscuits that are the pedal
4 times a day.
All of it, and all of this sugar. And you mentioned it to the nurse.
I said to the nurse, and I said, I could have eaten a kilo of sugar whilst I was here. She went, oh, I know, but a little bit of what you like does you good. I said, no, this is a heart ward. It's like,
and the nurses on the heart ward.
She was a big girl.
Yeah, massive.
It's like, what kind of advert is that?
Well, I was in the Nigel had to have an angiogram, didn't you? And I was waiting.
They said, oh wow, you've had it 20 years ago. You look amazing inside. Brilliant. Just staggering. That's great. Just carry on doing what you're doing. Nothing wrong with you.
But while I was waiting for Nigel, one of the nurses came out, and she had one of these big, like a long tube of digestive biscuits. And she came out and she opened these digestive biscuits, and there was and the nurses are eating these digestive. Now, I was like, am I judging? Well, yeah, because you're on a heart ward. You're on a heart ward, and the person opposite, but you eat a biscuit, that's fine.
The guy opposite was like 3 times my size.
And was
literally, and he was younger than me.
And she said, because he was behind a curtain, and she said, and what do you weigh? And he said, oh, I think it was something like 120 kilos. I'm thinking, God, he must be about 7 foot tall. Because, I mean, how do you carry 120 kilos? And he came out, and he was no taller than you, not smaller than you.
He wasn't 3 times my size, so I'm just over 70, 71, 2, 1, 2.
But he couldn't get they couldn't get the gown around him.
So he's 50 kilos heavier than me. I mean, but the thing is, if people are not told the consequence, people go, if you drink too much, you fall over. There is that, of course, there is that. But if you drink too much, it puts sugar into your blood. The blood then rasps your arteries. You then are told you need statins, and then you need this for your arteries and that, and ramipril and bisoprolol and aspirin to keep your blood thin so it can get through your arteries that are being clogged by the food that we're telling you to eat, because we're telling you not to eat it. Or we're not telling you to eat it, we're just letting you carry on. So we have a responsibility to ourselves. We must have a responsibility to ourselves to eat the right food, and to know what the consequences are of it. I like lager, I like beer, I like red and white wine, and I like sparkling. I could drink it every day. I used to. Red, white and sparkling. Was never really into spirits, but beer, red, white and sparkling. And those very nice people from Laithwaites would deliver boxes. They just turn up. It's great. 24 bottles, wonderful. Supplemented by cases of Stella. But the thing is, if you don't know what the long-term effect is, you go, oh, I'll tone it down when I get a bit older. But who does? And that's the problem. That's the big problem. Nobody knows what's actually happening to us inside. And we're told by someone, take these drugs. We're told by someone, eat this food. And we dutifully do it. And that's what Standard is about. That's why we're doing these live shows and go, well, it's up to you. You do what you like. We do this because we keep reading this stuff and researching this stuff. And I've got a good reason to do it. You know, I've had the quadruple bypass. I've got the scars on my legs. I've got the big scar down here. You know, I don't like angiograms. I don't like any of it. I remember Willie Rushton went for an angiogram. He was a comedian back in the day, in the kind of 80s, give or take, around about then. But in the 90s, he went for an angiogram and he died when he had an angiogram. It's because they put a needle in your artery and release some dye so they can see where any blockages might be. And I wondered when I had my first angiogram at age 34, why were there 12 people in this room? And I realised it was the crash team. So just in case you had a heart attack when you're on there, it's like... But I'm still here today. I'm 58. I know I look good. I know I'm only 72 kilos. I'm wearing... My waist is 32. And we're live. You talk.
We seem to be experiencing some technical problems today. I don't know why. We'll get to the bottom of it. But if you are still with us, thank you for being patient with us. You know, we are going to draw this to a close. I think really what our message today is that, you know, God wants us to be healthy. You know, we can talk about healing, but actually we want to get to a point where we don't need to depend on drugs. We don't need to depend on or trust actually what the government is saying to us about in terms of our diet, because there's a lot of material out there. There's a lot of material about fasting. There's a lot of material about intermittent fasting and keto, the high fat, low carb, and it's not something that is out there. We're not advocating, you know, doing juice or slimming pills or anything like that. This is something that is you know, it's a natural way of eating, and I think if you can overcome those hurdles of intermittent fasting, like the fasting bit, in actual fact, it's a good way of eating. And I know from my own point of view, you know, we would have a sandwich at lunchtime, you know, and I love toast and bread, believe me, I love it. But I'd get to like 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I'd have the mid-afternoon dip, and I'd get the sugar shakes, as I used to call them, because I'd eaten bread. And I'd feel terrible, but I'd feel really tired and really sleepy. I don't get those feelings now. I don't feel tired or, you know, like I want to just curl up and go to sleep. If I eat bread, I know that I can expect if I go out that I'm going to I have a crash, and I know what it feels like, and it's really not very pleasant. So I think it's about just understanding what your body does.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's where we, you know, some people would say, well, we're here to eat. Yeah, but this is a believer's channel. God wants you fit and healthy and living a life that you want to live. Food is fuel. That's all it is. It's just fueling. Keeps you being able to walk and do stuff. That's it. Sugar is more addictive than cocaine. Fact. You can get put in prison for cocaine, but not for sugar. It's given as a treat. It's given as a reward. It's given as consolation. It's constantly there. Sugar in everything, and it just bit by bit by bit kills you off. Now, who would want to do that? Who would want to kill off humanity with sugar? I wonder.
Because it's accessible to everybody.
You know, from babies, from tiny babies, they're given sugar. right the way through to sitting there in later years munching through a box of chocolates. And then people don't make that association. They keep eating the drugs, taking the drugs that they think allows them to keep eating the crap and the rubbish. So we're going to call it a day on this particular show. I can't believe it crashed twice. But
we'll get to the bottom of it.
We don't run the technology.
Maybe Satan didn't want us to do this one on health because it actually has far-reaching consequences for everybody, whether you're a believer or not. It has huge consequences.
Yeah.
And you know what you are, what you eat, and it says. You know, there's a bit of a cliche, but I think the point is that, you know, out there in the world there are temptations. That's fine, and you can, you know, it's like do you indulge or not indulge? But it's when indulgence becomes a lifestyle, when it becomes something that you think it's more important. You know, you'd rather have breakfast than address the fact that you're taking statins and say, actually, maybe I should stop taking the statins and maybe I can do without breakfast. I mean, maybe that's simplifying it too much, but I think, you know, when you start making decisions about your health...
But it is worth
just
looking into this.
Look into it, look into fasting, look into intermittent fasting.
It's all about research. You've got to do research. Don't listen to anybody else except what you find out. And if you're not sure about something, message us. Say hello. Just say, look, can you send us this information? Where can I go for this? Where can I go for that? Just research it for yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's you will only do something based upon what you believe.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do this deliberately. Look at that. This is me, 58, and I'm happy. I'm pleased. That's how I look now. Because I didn't used to look. Because I did used to look like that. Look at those cheeks. Look at those cheeks. But that's the whole thing. That's the deal. That's the deal here. And so research it for yourself. Check it out. Learn and understand it. And share it with your kids. Share it with your friends. We're not talking about creating some movement. Just understand what you're eating and why and who would want you to keep eating all the sugar? Because sugar leads to drugs. Yeah. And doctors and hospitals and dependencies on that, and it's a constant vicious circle or a cycle that humanity and mankind are expected to follow, and you don't have to opt out. Choose what you put in your mouth, and that's it. I think that's a good one. That's it today.
And what are we talking about next week?
Right, I'll just segue over to this section. He says, there we go. He still says? Yes, you can. Next week, we're going to talk about religion.
Oh. That might take some preparation.
I think. But it's not religion. We're talking about religion, not believers, not atheism. And we talked before about this one, this thing. We've got atheist, agnostic, religious, and then Christian and believer. Going that with Christian and believer. So we're talking about religion, the one right in the middle. That's where everybody thinks, well, not everybody. You've got 1.5 billion Catholics, 1.5 billion Muslims. They're religious. And then you've got your Taoists and Buddhists and Hindus and Sikhs and so on and so on. They're all religious. So it's understanding that and looking at that from a believer's perspective, looking back, because obviously we've made this. We start here. We've made this journey up to this point here to becoming believers.
Yeah.
So,
call it a day.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'll put the music on as it plays us out. Hopefully it won't it won't crash again. And you know exactly what I'm going to do straight afterwards. I'm going to have to find out why it kept crashing. Anyway, that's bye from us. See you next week.
Bye.